on digital transformation, the one and only Chad Osgood, and the one and only Lauren Eckert. They will be speaking on today's topic of automation, and more specifically on robotic process automation. I personally have found this remarkable because according to the latest McKinsey report, robotic process automation software is a new development in business automation that offers a potential ROI of 30 to 200% in the first year. Folks, this is something you want to pay attention to. So I'm going to start with Lauren. Lauren, thank you for joining us today. Would you mind taking a moment to share with the audience a brief background on Premier Logic and the type of work that you and Chad are involved with?
Sure, Caitlin, thanks for the great introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here. I'm going to hit just a quick intro of sort of myself and Chad and Premier Logic together to your question, Caitlin, because it's sort of part of the same story. But you know, both myself and Chad are business and technology entrepreneurs, business leaders. Really spent our careers in technology leadership. We've launched companies, we've managed companies, and certainly in the context of Premier Logic are in the forefront of advising companies around the technology and digital perspective. So we really come at this today as people that care and passionately about the world of technology and are really here as advisors and help to, per the title, demystify things. So that's our approach individually. As we head to the next slide, that's also our approach as Premier Logic. So just to share a little bit about the firm and the type of services and engagement we're in the marketplace. So as you see here, we're a digital transformation and technology consulting firm. So what does that mean? Really think of us as the intersection of a sort of a digital strategy firm meets a digital agency with a very strong focus on user experience and customer engagement, meets a software and IT technology firm, and wrapping that all together into one, really for the purpose of helping organizations understand how to innovate and grow leveraging technology. That's who we are, and that's how we approach business. On the next slide, we really come at it both from kind of helping manage the life cycle of, you know, again, understanding where the world of emerging technology and digital solutions is, how to understand that and how to fit it to business objectives and business outcomes. So we live really on what we call the innovation side of the equation. Separately, we live in the execution side of the equation and aim to help companies throughout that entire life cycle. From an execution standpoint, sorry, just real quick on the last slide, just transforming across the organization, do it both back office standpoint and front office. So back office, more enterprise technology, front office, more product development and digital innovation. In the middle, again, is what we call that innovation practice, which is where when there's risk, when there's ambiguity, typical areas where organizations sometimes struggle to get launched with new initiatives and emerging things like RPA. That's where our innovation practice kicks in, and that's certainly where we see the world of innovation today around things like AI and machine learning and robotic process automation.
So we'd like to actually learn a little bit about our audience, and we do have a polling question, which I'm going to go ahead and launch just to learn a little bit more about you. So just quickly, is your company currently evaluating these emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and robotic process automation? Just select one of the following, please, and then we'll close this in just a moment.
And it looks, for what it's worth, you know, this is Chad. We're seeing a strong indication that folks are certainly evaluating RPA and AI, so not a big surprise there. But this will also help us understand how to kind of tailor our content here as we get deeper into the discussion. So.
So interesting, it looks like we definitely have a well-rounded audience and some different levels of understanding on RPA. Lauren, given this background, could you give us a quick perspective on today's topic of RPA and what the audience can expect to learn in the next 50 minutes?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Caitlin. So if you see the slide here, we're here really to talk about what some folks are calling Industry 4.0. So you go back to the Industrial Revolution and what transpired after that, and mass production and computerization, sort of the world latched on to Industry 2.0 and 3.0. So, you know, when you hear digital transformation and everything that's underneath that now, like AI and machine learning and even blockchain and sort of all things digital, that a lot of folks are calling that Industry 4.0. You know, obviously we've been hearing about the digital cycle for a long, long time, and to some extent deep into that. But as we go forward to the next slide and specifically talk about things like robotic process automation, our view is that we're actually pretty early on into the transformation and disruption that's yet to still happen in kind of Industry 4.0. So things that like we're going to talk about here today, we want to help you understand where that fits and where the opportunity is going forward. We got that. So final slide here, and then we'll dive into some of the depths of it. So in that category, you see a hierarchy here where RPA, which stands for Robotic Process Automation, on the far left, and then kind of moving up the value chain, the intelligent value chain there, to things like cognitive computing and artificial intelligence. We're going to come back to this later, so don't want to spend a lot of time here. Point being, some of the things like AI and machine learning, there's a lot of hype out there, and some of what we're seeing and hearing is there's a lot of maturity that needs to happen yet. RPA, we're here to tell you today that RPA, the time for it is now. The ROI that companies are achieving from it is now. We're seeing use cases relevant in almost every business. So we want to help, as we say, demystify that a little bit, and hopefully by the end of today, you have a better sense of what is it, how does it apply to your business, and how can it be a foundation for achieving more intelligent things and AI things in the future. So we do see it as a foundation starting point. So our approach is dive a little bit deeper into what it is, show you some examples, give you some kind of mental frameworks for how to think about it. Chad's going to walk us through some demonstrations and examples and demos, talk about some specific use cases, dive deep, and then more than anything, we do want to save time for Q&A at the end. So as Caitlin said, please continue to cycle your questions through the GoToWebinar front end, and we'll address those as much as we can at the end. So with that, Caitlin, I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thank you so much, Lauren. So I'd like to now turn the floor over to the Chad Osgood, who's going to walk us through some real examples and demos. And ultimately, Chad is going to help us demystify robotic process automation. Chad. All right,
thank you, Caitlin. Not sure I deserve the emphasis on the Chad, but I'll take it. Thank you. And we like to start off, just to kind of put it out there as a kind of a mental framework of how we're going to break down the details of what RPA is, and then ultimately give you a series of examples to make it more concrete and specific. I think what Lauren said, there's certainly there's hype, there's marketing materials, there's research out there that talks a lot about RPA and the great and good things it can do. But our goal here is not to just, describe the marketing kind of brochure. We're here to kind of get pragmatic and help you understand, how it can be deployed in some of the pitfalls. And so, the words you see up there with, digital workforce and transformation of the back office, that's the kind of the pillars of our discussion today. So fundamentally, RPA is a tool. We've got an audience that, seems like there's a good degree of existing understanding of RPA among this group. But they're not physical robots. We actually get that question a lot. These are software robots, and fundamentally, it's Windows applications primarily that are running on some infrastructure somewhere. So it is a tool. It's a software tool. You'll hear us talk a lot about digital workforce, and I'll explain that a little bit more. But it's really fundamentally help drive transformation. And though we emphasize back office here, there are ways and strategies to transform the front office as well: sales, customer enablement, interaction, and things of that nature. So breaking that down a little further, as we say, it's a workforce. We find it helpful to think about it in every sense of the word as a digital employee. You onboard them the same way, or at least you should. It goes through the same governance in terms of requiring access to systems and everything else that's involved. We describe it as taking the robot out of the human. So, if you have activity among the workforce today where, it's robotic and a lot of the daily activities they have, research shows that upwards of 30% of just about every function within most businesses have kind of that robotic activity. answering emails, processing invoices, approving things, and so forth. So, the other positive aspect is that, once you extract that kind of robotic activity out of what humans do, then they can do things that that they want to do, that they're better at doing, applying intelligence, discretion, and doing more productive and more valuable things to the business. And so the mindset is not we don't look at it as a replacement necessarily. It's not a one-to-one. It's how can you automate as much of a function as possible? That could be everything from 10% to 80%, 90%, whatever makes the most sense. So the way we like to thought it, and why the idea of a digital workforce is something that is gaining prominence today. So if you think about the process kind of front end, the front office, that's everything from customer management, sales, marketing. That's the people that are actually interacting with and driving value to your customers on a daily basis. In today's business, that's rapidly changing, and it's even changing more rapidly. The pace is increasing. Businesses are being disrupted. The consumer demands are changing. Retail is a great example, e-commerce and so forth. So the pace is changing, and what's happening is technology is making attempts to keep up. This is not an old problem, but you have everything from mainframe solutions, ERP systems, SAP, Dynamics, and so forth. And then you've got thousands upon thousands of individual point solutions, software as a service applications, from sales automation to DevOps tools, and so forth. And so you have a rapidly changing business landscape that is being supported by a still increasing and rapidly changing technology landscape. And whenever those intersections don't exactly meet in the middle, people fill in the gaps. And so what happens when people fill in the gaps that maybe should have either been done by technology or better aligned with the business, you create organizational and technical debt. Now, I'm assuming that most of the audience has heard of technical debt. Maybe you're applying it today, maybe you're measuring it today and thinking about it. Organizational debt is something less discussed, especially among kind of IT circles, but it's important to look at both, which is if people are filling gaps that the technology should do, then we have a technical debt issue that's being solved by creating organizational debt. It's hiring people to fill in those gaps. Just about every business in existence has some of that to some degree. The goal isn't to get that to zero. The goal is just to manage it and to provide a solution for it. And so that's what a digital workforce can do. And what it means is that we've got a digital workforce that is complementary to and sits alongside the human workforce. Just as a very brief example, one of the largest logistics companies that we're working with has a series of 5 or 6 different systems of record that are in place. They don't all provide accurate or enough information to complete certain front office functions, so they have a large team of people in the middle, kind of moving information around and providing that information. And so RPA is a way to complement that human workforce by extracting information out of those systems to provide a more unified system of record that would be otherwise cost prohibitive, time prohibitive for technology to do that. As we know, rolling out a large substantial update to an ERP system or email or mobile applications or anything, it's costly, it's risky. With the kind of current security posture we have in technology world today, information breaches and disclosure and so forth, that's becoming more difficult. So RPA becomes a different answer by creating a digital workforce to fill in those gaps. So that's a big pillar of how we think about it. In terms of back office transformation, the old iceberg, analogy here. You've got 15% or so of what you see on the surface, and that's what your customer sees. That's the experience. That's the user interface. Your customers probably are not experiencing your back office ERP systems and all the related processes, right? So everything that sits underneath, that's your technical debt. That's everything that you wish you could change if you had infinite time and resources. It's where all your legacy systems are, green screen applications, Excel spreadsheets, Access databases, and so forth, custom applications and everything else. So what that means is that you've got businesses that are you've got the economy and consumers that are kind of helping or pushing and driving disruption from the top down. Consumers are demanding quicker everything. It's a Twitter economy in the sense I need bite-sized information. I need immediate results, immediate gratification. Amazon is probably a perfect example of that. So that disruption is happening, top to bottom. Businesses that have a lot of legacy and background, they're transforming from the bottom up. How can legacy retail compete in an e-commerce economy? How can Walmart, with a lot of retail assets and processes and overhead, compete with the Amazons in an e-commerce economy? So, it might seem like a far-fetched, kind of aspirational goal, but RPA is emerging as a tool to help with that. It's not here to solve all those problems, but it's a tool that can help. So finally, before we kind of get into some demos, we want to kind of, this is kind of part of our demystification. When you look at the left of kind of where some of these tools really kind of started, it goes back to kind of even old school screen scraping. That was being done back in green screen applications, decades ago in many respects. You have your business process tools in the middle, and there's a lot of great sophisticated tools that can help with that. And then you emerge on the right with the idea of just kind of robotic process automation, enterprise tools that bring kind of enterprise level rigor to executing on, what would otherwise be done with kind of screen scraping or scripting tasks in a very scalable way. And we'll show you, why that's the case. But our message here is that don't think so much of RPA as this new thing that has suddenly kind of emerged. It's an evolution, and it's not so much that it's a grand new thing. It's a maturity of everything that has occurred over the past, decade or more. So in terms of a spectrum of RPA tools, we like to break it down this way, which is you have on your left, and we've got some examples on the bottom there. For what it's worth, UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, those are really your leading, vendors, if you will, of RPA tools today. It's becoming a more competitive landscape. There's certainly new entrants to that market, but those are your market leaders if you read Gartner and everything else. UiPath, kind of an example, it's more of, I'd say, an IT-driven tool. It's kind of development-centric. It looks more familiar, I would say, to developers and so forth. And so kind of IT-driven. You have your more traditional, really more desktop automation from recording desktop, activity and then putting that into, in effect, a script and then automating the script. And then you have more of a kind of a pure RPA tool, which is more of a black box, highly governed environment where you're not recording anything, you're really instructing or training robots to execute processes. Different functions for different needs, different capabilities. On the right, you're really more focused on kind of the business side, providing the rigor, compliance, and governance that the business needs. Leaning more toward the left, you're really looking at more technology-driven tools. Again, different tools for different circumstances. So another couple of things, just a way to think about it. Robots don't take PTO, and I know it kind of sounds like a joke, but it's something that's true. If you have something that takes, 2 hours a day to complete, well, now you can do 12 of those a day with a robot, theoretically, versus, say 4 with a human. No breaks. It does it exactly the same way every single time. So, you get to, a 100% accuracy rate. It doesn't make mistakes unless it was, in essence, trained to do so. And I think the other side of it is that the failure rate of executing the process is very low, meaning it doesn't break because it's waiting for a reply or waiting for a screen to refresh or things of that nature. So it's a highly transactionalized, function, which would otherwise maybe take multiple humans, multiple departments, and we'll show you some examples of that to do. Finally, cheaper, faster, better. On the surface, just in terms of kind of a one-to-one treatment, robots on a kind of licensing to a kind of a human cost, if you will, it's definitely just cheaper on the surface there. We'll show you the execution speed. So, we find on average that can be hundreds of % faster versus, a human driving the execution in a similar manner. And then finally, again, I already kind of touched on this, but the accuracy rate. So that's something that's very important. The final part with the auditable side, we'll show you this, but if you could audit and have a clear history of everything humans did within their processes to fulfill a business function, That's what you get out of a robot. So you know exactly what it did, when it did it, how long it took, whether it was successful or not, whether there were exceptions and so forth. You get that level of kind of auditable granularity. That's great for financial services. That's great for, you know, things in highly compliant regulatory environments, be it HIPAA or PCI or PHI and things of that nature. So it's a very important attribute of this, and we'll show you what that looks like in the tool itself.